Hello, BookTube. This is part 2 of my 4 parts in a epilogue journey through The Brothers Karamazov by Fyodor Dostoyevsky. So, I guess spoilers, because I'm going to talk about part 2 of this book, starting off at book 4, Crack-Ups, and going all the way to the end of Elder Zosima's life testament and his, spoilers, death. Which, he starts out this part not feeling very good. He started out the novel not feeling good, and spoilers by the end, he doesn't make it out the end. So yes, the love triangle continues between. Actually, is it a love triangle? It's Grusha, loved by the two brothers, Dmitri and Ivan, and by the father, Fyodor, and also there's Katrina. Katrina, the kind of the jilted woman from Dmitri, who's Dmitri's supposed to care for, but actually in this section there's all this exploration of Ivan, the middle atheist son, and his and Katrina's kind of S&M relationship of basically denying their love to each other in what seems very overwrought Russian sort of way of we're going to deny each other. I'm going to live my entire life in devotion to Dmitri and always from afar, but I will never ever abandon him, and I will destroy my entire life. It's just like, okay, that part is a little, it's very passionate. You can see that passionate things are going to happen in this book, and for the most part, power of the book, you buy into that. You also get a section here of it's interesting, you get other kind of reflections of father and son relationships. Dmitri horribly humiliated some kind of lowly, disgraced army captain, and humiliated him in front of his son. And Katrina sends the youngest, Alosha, to try and give him some money to help him. And there's just this whole thing of he almost takes some money, but at the end he crumples it up and storms away, and just kind of the things of the pride, like had promised his son not to take this charity, to not further humiliate himself, and Alosha almost convinced him, but that didn't happen. This is also a book of two opposing things. You've got the Grand Inquisitor, who is this fictional character from the mind of Ivan, of the atheist, up against Elder Zosima, who is this kind of the father figure mentor for Alosha, who is the kind of, they're the two polar opposites that seem to battle it out in this section. The Grand Inquisitor comes from this prose poem that Ivan tells Alosha, and it's all about, basically Christ coming again to the as the Grand Inquisition is happening in Spain, and the Inquisitor taking this Christ who never speaks in this thing. He's like, you don't have anything more to say because you've already given your teachings to the world. Anything you would add would hinder their freedom to make their own thing, because that's the great thing about Christ, is apparently is setting us free. But said but the Grand Inquisitor, who is this very cynical old man, just fresh from, burning heretics, fellow Christians, is like, yeah, people don't want freedom, and we're going to enslave them and thus make them happy. And it's a very odd section. I would have almost said, I thought as I was reading it, wow, this doesn't fit in here. But then you come to the very end of the book, where end of this part, where you have Father Zosima on his deathbed, and he gives his teachings, and it suddenly breaks into this almost like a manuscript that is supposed to have come from Alosha, of him talking about his life, how he came to the order, and then his teachings. It's very biblical in that sense. So there's these two. There's like kind of the demonic, the Grand Inquisitor, which of the two of them, that's the one that gets collected into a little book of kind of as the heart. It's called the Heart of the Brothers Karamazov. It'll be interesting to see how my reflections of that come on, because it seems to be that the Grand Inquisitor and the life and testament of Elder Zosima, those two together seem to be doing battle. Dostoyevsky never just says one thing. He always says two things that contradict and that battle each other, and you don't know which one do you actually believe in. I can see why the Grand Inquisitor one. It feels like the Grand Inquisitor, the more cynical, the more kind of will to power, the more power. We're gonna enslave people to make them happy. In a cynic's world of what the view of how the world ended up might be the one. Why this is the one that's more focused upon, rather Elder Zosima's thing of to love. And that he says at one point a thing that really struck me, which was like it's to love constantly. Even the most wicked can love every once in a while. Which I don't know. I think about myself. It's like I can love every once in a while, but what this rather sainted figure, perhaps not, perhaps a complete charlatan, is saying is asking to love constantly. Just like I think there's a whole thing of Christ wasn't just like not just right action, but also right thought, and that's asking a lot of us frail human beings. So it's interesting that these two things are clashing, and I think that's got to be the genius of Dostoevsky. So it's interesting because you could say this is a total diversion. This is like you could have streamlined this whole thing down, Dostoevsky baby, and just got into the story and keep that love triangle going, because the kids today, they like the love triangles. Ooh, a quadrangle. Jeez, Dostoevsky baby, you're gonna make $1 million with this idea, but we gotta get rid of all this religious stuff. Yeah, no, he didn't. And not surprisingly. That said, there's some of the passages of Father Zosima were harder to take in, probably because I am much more on the atheistic level, even if there's a more moral imperative there that I probably am interested in. Though it's interesting, both the Grand Inquisitor and Father Zosima, you can't help but thinking what's going to be coming to Russia. There's all this kind of Russian exceptionalism. Well, I guess there was in the end. There was the communist revolution and the horrible fallout from that, and the bloodshed and the pain and the suffering from that. I mean, not that you can't say that this book also talks about the pain and the horrible disruption that the scientific revolution that the democratic revolution is going to have in the rest of the world. So things things are going to suck all over. And I guess maybe this isn't a book that's particularly selling peace, and isn't selling that everything's going to be wonderful. I mean, there's some very affecting passages in this book where Ivan, in his run up to the Grand Inquisitor story, talks about this is a world where children get bayoneted, where children are horribly tortured, supposedly the innocents, the ones that have no blame, but there's just all this terrible savagery towards them, and yet we call this a world of how do we resolve all that death and suffering of the most innocent of us, with a beneficial world. So yeah, even as I don't know, it's funny. It's one of these books. Sometimes I catch myself going like, I'm not really someone who believes in God, but I do find these books interesting to wrestle with the questions. It's interesting that there's a lot of criticism of the Roman Catholic Church in this book, where you wonder if Dostoevsky is using the Roman Catholic Church as a safe target, because if he was taking aim at his own religion, that would be a less safe topic. So we'll talk about institutionalized religion over here, and its corruption, but we won't focus on this over there. So yeah, so that is part 2. It's a very small slice of part 2 of the Brothers Karamazov, and looking how things are going, I'm almost halfway through the month. It's probably going to be another half month or whatever before I get to the next half. Which, you know what, I'm fine with. I'm really enjoying kind of sinking sinking deeply into this book, reading it, and then listening to it on audio, and that's going really well for me. So I feel like there's a little bit of it. If 5% of the Brothers Karamazov can sink into my brain, and I can process some of that, I think that's a big success for me. So yes, more videos later.